Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. I'm your co-host, Maria Casillas, joined by my incredible co-host, Cody Sizemore. And today, we are so thrilled to be welcoming a very special guest, Catherine Van Der Laan, to do our show today. But before we have her introduce herself, I just want to let you know a little bit about her. And then I also want to get through some of the stuff that we always do at the beginning of every one of our episodes. Catherine Van Der Laan is a faith-based financial and executive coach. She works with both individuals and corporations, and her husband's a minister, and she's the creator of the Financial Abundance course. So we're going to be going on some really fun adventures today with Catherine. We're going to find out a little bit about why she does what she does, how she does what she does, and we're going to make sure that you have some tangible stuff to take away with you today. So if you want to grab a notebook and a pen, feel free to hit pause and do that. And while you've done that, go ahead and also give us a nice rating and review on our podcast, since you're already hitting pause anyway. And we just want to remind you to join us in our Facebook group, which is the Financial Coaches Facebook community by New Money Habits. So we'd appreciate you joining us there, because that's where we get to meet all of our wonderful guests and have some really great conversations. So without further ado, Catherine, welcome to our show today. Please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like our audience to know about you.
Thank you, Maria. I am very excited to be here. So as Maria said, my name is Catherine Van Der Laan. I love God. I love my kids. I love my husband, definitely. And I love all of them, definitely. But and I love my clients probably a little bit more than I should. So because we're supposed to keep a little separation, right? But I get so invested in their success that it's sometimes not great. So that's a little bit about me. I had an entrepreneurial bug from a young age and couldn't figure out what to do until I was around, 30 years old, and decided to work towards setting up a coaching business. So here we are now.
That's great. Could you share with us where you saw that bug? I'm just curious.
Oh, what a fun question. Every place that I have worked, I've gotten a little nickname, and it usually is something close to the future CEO.
Oh.
And so I was in these giant businesses, 5,000, 10,000 plus employees, and would very quickly kind of take over, even as an assistant, different departments. And it wasn't because I wanted to be in charge. It was only because I really love strategy. I like how things fit together. I like making money. That's fun for me. I like talking to people and helping people become their best selves in business and finances and in anywhere that they want to grow, right? And so I even as a 22-year-old, I went into an enormous business and went, you know what I can improve? Let's improve this over here. Do I have permission? Great. After the first 2 times you ask permission to improve something, they just say, go do whatever you want. And so that's how it happened. I decided, hey, if I'm going to be doing this at larger organizations, I should find a place to do this. I should create a place to do this where I'm doing the most good. And I thought owning my own business and operating that is really where I can do the most good.
So you found a way very early on to align the things that were important to you with what you were going to do in the world and find a way to make money with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pretty early on.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that's actually a really good topic that we could jump into today if you're open to that. Just the idea of aligning our values with our spending habits and how our coaches who are listening can help their clients do the same thing. I know that's something that Cody and I have talked about on here before, but we love fresh perspective. We love new ideas. And so we would love to hear your take on that whole idea as well.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dive into it. Ask me anything. I do this with almost all of my clients. Some of them are not really into it, but most, I would say 95% have been really, really into aligning values and their faith with their finances and their daily decisions, right? It's not something that we talk about too often, especially not out of church, and a lot of churches don't talk about it anyway.
Right.
So I would say, where do we start with this? Because you know what? I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So it said, we'll just go there.
Yeah.
So I am by nature and by training a data analyst. I love data. I like data parameters. I love numbers. I'm one of the biggest nerds you've ever seen. Anytime I take personality assessments and there's a technical component, I'm a 10 out of 10 on the technical component, right? So Excel is my love language. And so one of them anyway. And so
do you excel at it?
I do excel at it, but I'm
just making sure. Okay.
Thanks, Cody. So that I would say, coming from the side of data, from my perspective, that can feel really almost antithetical. It can feel very far removed from people. It can feel far removed from decisions and lives. And in a corporation, very often there's this trope that CEOs will hide behind a spreadsheet to lay people off, right? They don't want to know who people are when they lay them off. I promise I'm coming around full circle. So when people start to look at their finances and they're seeing my budgeting process is review, decide, review. So review last month, decide what you want to spend this month, and review that against your goals. They look at it, because I work mostly with corporate clients, executives and whatnot. They look at it as if it's a spreadsheet and not a bunch of tiny decisions. And so they say, okay, well, here are all of my subscriptions. Here's my car payment. Here's the HOA fee. And they'll list it all down as if it's just data. And my job, I've found, is to peel back that layer of psychopathy. I'm just kidding.
But not really kidding.
I'm sort of kidding. Peel back that layer and ask them about who they are. What do you value in life? If you gave me your top 3 values, what would they be? So Cody, let's chat a little bit. Cody, what are your top 3 values in life?
I would say faith, family, and growth, personal growth. Those are probably my top 3.
All right. Faith, family, and personal growth. Maria, how about you? What are your top 3 values?
I would also say faith and family. And for me, discovery. Okay. Discovery. Very fun. Yeah. So mine are a little bit different, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and mine change like every 6 to 12 months, right? And so mine are, the top one is integrity and authenticity, right? I am who I say I am, and I will continue to do what I say I will do, right? My second one is serving God and loving God. So those two go hand in hand with me. I have a hard time loving him if I'm not serving him. And which I'll decouple eventually in therapy, probably. And and my last one is doing the most good for the people around me. So continuing to serve and love the people around me. So you could say that that's growth of the people around me. I don't know. I've just called myself a catalyst my whole life. So those, I would say, are my top 3 values. So it's all around. Yeah. Anyway, so if you think about your top 3 values, Maria, Cody, anybody who's listening, write those 3 down, relate them to your life. What decisions are you making that fit in those values? And which ones are you making that don't fit in those values?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I do with my clients. Then we go through and we'll look at their budget, and they've done their budget, the decide review. And I'll say, which of these decisions align with your values? Let's highlight them, and we pick a certain color, right? And we're usually just looking at an Excel spreadsheet together or a Google sheet. And so we'll highlight line by line. And then I'll say, which of these don't align with your values? And if they're spouses, we do it together with, both spouses, and they get their own colors. And so they'll go through and they'll highlight which ones don't align and talk through why. And then I'll say, great, we haven't highlighted everything because you do need housing, and that's okay. We're not going to highlight your HOA, although some people highlight that as it doesn't align. Great. So then we'll dissect that and say, what can you change? It kind of falls along that theme of what can you change here to align your spending with your values? How would that make you feel? Let's do a little experiment. I'm big on experiments. Let's do a little experiment over the next month and change this to align with your values of who you are, what you value in life, and measure joy day by day on a scale of 1 to 10. Every time around dinner, before dinner or after, whichever is whenever you feel happiest, let's measure your joy on a scale of 1 to 10. And so throughout the month, as they make little decisions, we like to measure the joy.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Mostly because, so Maria, you mentioned that we've talked about this topic before. And we have. It's actually been quite some time since we have talked about it, though. So it's really good that we're talking about it now, especially because we always have new listeners, stuff like that. But this is a topic that I feel that I hear a lot about in this space, like for different like financial coaches and whatnot. And it's almost kind of like that, like for financial coaches, this is a topic that it's almost kind of like people who are trying to be money conscious. It's just like common knowledge that like, hey, we should try and save money because like that's what everyone said. That's what everyone does, like all that kind of stuff, right? So this is kind of like that for coaches where it's like, hey, like we should try and help our clients align their values with their spending, right? But we kind of just take that and we're just like, okay, that's just what it is. Like that's what we should do kind of thing. I guess the question I have would be for those people who are listening who have heard this thing before, but they're kind of curious, like, why is it so important to help someone with this? What would you say to that question? What's the point in doing this? Like, why not just focus on help them control their spending kind of thing and playing devil's advocate? You know?
Yeah, I hear that. So, and that's a really great question. I like to build confidence in small steps, and I have a lot of confidence in aligning values with spending because I've seen the results. The results are an increase of joy. The results are a decrease in spending significantly. They are an increase in alignment of time and activities with values and intentionality that goes behind decision making. And when people feel more joy, I found this, when people feel more joy in their spending because it's aligned to their values, it makes the bigger decisions easier. So I like to do this exercise a lot sooner than most coaches that I've heard of, because then we can open up the discussion and say, hey, that car payment that you have, how does that align with your values? And does the car that you bought align with your values, or does it align with what you thought other people thought your values should be? And so it just frames the discussion in a way where people, I've had somebody come to coaching with me when they bought a house, they couldn't afford the mortgage payment. They bought a house and were almost underwater on it immediately. Okay. And they had a lot of repairs to do that they weren't expecting. They were afraid of losing their job, and this, it's okay. They're 50% of the population is a woman, so I'll call her a she. And I don't really need to anonymize her too much, right? And so she and I went through this values-based spending exercise, aligned her spending to her values. She said no to a lot of things, and she ended up renting out her house and renting out a room. She has so much more joy in her life, and that conversation was a lot easier because she had a framework for aligning decisions in her life with her values.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. There's one result I'd like to add to the list that you already gave, and it's because I do very similar stuff. And one of the results that I've seen is greater sustainability in the change that the people make. And I know you probably have also seen it. I just didn't hear you say it. So I wanted to make sure our coaches hear that it's okay to, like, it's change is always hard. Change for a short time is easier than change for a long time if you don't have the correct framework. And that's the other word I wanted to pull out, that I love what you just said, that's what's happening here. We're just helping provide that framework for people so that they're able to make the decisions in any situation, because they don't need to, like, when we teach our kids something, we want them to learn how to be able to do something in any given situation, not just the very specifics, because otherwise they might be able to master this one area, but when then they go to the other area, they're like, I have no idea. But if we can teach them that framework of how to think through something, how to understand what the question is, etc., they're going to have better results later on. And I think that that's what you're saying we're doing with clients now.
That's right. If you know how to flip a pancake with a spatula, then you know how to flip an egg, you know how to make an omelet, you know how to do anything in a pan.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we're doing here.
Yes. Great analogy for that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Building off of that analogy, I also think that everything that you said, I agree with. And one thing that kind of stands out to me is that we're really keeping it simple for people by doing this. So like you said, if you know how to flip something, you can flip many things, right? So for most people, and I'm talking about like people who are just personal finance, not like the corporations or the businesses or anything like that. But for people who generally step into financial coaching, most of them, not all of them, but most of them really don't have a good grasp on how to handle their finances in the first place. It's very confusing for them. It's very overwhelming for them. They don't know where to begin. They don't know what to do, all that kind of stuff. So if we can make it something so simple that's just like, hey, let's just focus on what is best for you and what aligns with you. Number one, it's simple, which is what we're talking about. But number two, it's also very empowering because they don't have to feel like they need to do something for someone else. They don't have to feel like they need to do something a certain way. They don't have to stay to like a pre-prescribed script for their own finances. Like they just do what is best for them and what aligns for them, which creates all those other things, the increase in joy, the sustainability, the confidence, all those different types of things. So I love it because it is simple and it's empowering. And, I just want to say thank you for entertaining that question, because I just think that that's a question that probably hasn't been addressed for a lot of coaches. It's just, this is a topic that it's like, well, we know that this is something that we probably should do, but why is it? So I really appreciate you sharing all that.
Oh, sure. And you hit on something else as well. Oh, the steps, following a preconceived, a flow of what to do with people's finances and what they should do with their finances. I don't like the word should. I usually will give somebody a framework, especially some steps, and I've kind of created my own, and I'll flip-flop depending on who I'm talking to and what they want to do, right? And I'll say, hey, what's missing here? What do you want to add? Where are your personal goals on this? What can we cross out? How are you changing this? And when people have ownership on their own financial steps and what works with their personal finances, because personal finances are personal, they take a lot more action. And that's really the biggest hurdle, is getting from feeling to thought to action, right?
Yeah. And this is also a really practical way to meet people where they are. And we talk about that a lot here. And it's sometimes difficult. Like a lot of the stuff that we talk about, what's funny is I don't think it has always been the popular thing to talk about, aligning values and spending. That just seems like something that's come up lately. And I think that's why a lot of people aren't answering the question that Cody asked, because they are hearing it. And I think intuitively they know that this is a good thing, but they might not even know what the heck it is. And B, they might not know like how to actually do that. And so they just kind of use the words around that. And I think the same thing goes with the idea of meeting someone where they are. I've heard that buzzed a lot. And it's like, that's just because people know that intuitively that's important, but they don't know what it really means and how to actually do that. And I think what you're talking about, both of you right now, is the idea of actually meeting someone where they are, not just with their values though, but also with the specific talents and gifts that they have. I think I love what you said, Catherine, about being able to ask them what's missing, what do you want to add in here, what should we take away, and you're giving them that. But also, I mean, I do the whole highlighting thing too, and I think part of that's because it just gets them out of their head. And if there's somebody who's super creative and they're used to like thinking in color, if you will, that's how we're meeting them where they are. And so being able to do that and recognize that we all have different gifts that are given to us. We all have different talents. We all have different things that we struggle with. And if we as coaches can understand where those individuals' gifts are and really like play into that for them, then they're also going to be more successful than just having this pre-scripted, this is what we're supposed to do in this area, et cetera, et cetera.
Could you give us an example of someone having a certain gift or talent that we could encourage them to lean more into to help them with their finances?
Sure. Well, if somebody's not mathematically gifted, for example, and maybe they see things in pictures more, we can look at their finances in a way where we actually have discussion around it. I was just teaching a 12-year-old boy the other day how to do some of this stuff before he even has to worry about budgeting yet. We're just trying to talk about all the personal finance stuff. And so what I did with him actually was have him tell me, if no screens were in your life, what would you do with that time? Because I'm just a firm believer that a lot of times if we say we value something, but our money and our time aren't being devoted to those things, it's really not something that we're actually valuing. So, so I had him kind of share with me some of those things. And of course he said something like, baseball and video games, were things that he valued, but we dug a little bit deeper to figure out what some of those were. And I actually had a stack of cash. It was fake cash, but I had a stack of cash and I asked him to just pick up any number of bills from that. And when he did, I think he picked up a total of $386, something like that. And I had him just for fun, figure out what's the largest bill that you have. It was $100. I said, where will you spend this first $100? And he decided to spend it on a baseball bat. And then he did the next $100. And then I think the next bill was a $50. And we just kind of went through that to give him that hands-on experience of what it means to say, I'm going to spend this money on this thing. And at one point, that $50 that he had, it was kind of cute. He said, I would spend that I'd go back to something baseball. Maybe I would do a baseball ticket, but that'd probably only be enough for one ticket. So I guess I'll just go to the game by myself. And when we went back and looked at the values that he had circled on his sheet before that and did very similar to what Catherine was talking about, what of the spending aligns? He's like, I would change the baseball thing because I don't want to do that by myself. I actually want to be able to do things with other people. And so he was able to see that being with others was actually one of the things that he does value, that camaraderie, that friendship, the relationship. And so that, if I had just given him a bunch of numbers, he would have looked at me like, this doesn't make any sense. So I don't know if that really answers your question as an example. And I know I went down to a 12-year-old versus somebody who actually is in the thick of what we're talking about. But I think that's where some of that starts, is just being able to get ourselves out of what the society says we're supposed to do and really meet them where they are. And he happened to be 12. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And I can see how that could translate even to someone who's a little bit older than 12 years old.
Sure.
Maybe 13.
Yeah.
not 100, maybe 30, right? Like,
but then they might use real money to do it.
Yeah.
It's less hypothetical.
I think that's actually a really cool thing that, like, he even went through that to where he thought that baseball was, one of the things that was the most important to him, his biggest value. But then through that exercise, he actually found out that the root of that, or one thing that could actually, like, that makes baseball such a passion for him, is that camaraderie, is investing into his relationships. So, Catherine, I'm actually curious, have you ever experienced that with any of your clients, to where initially they said that they had like a value or something that was really important to them, but then as you started talking through it more, they actually realized that it wasn't actually X, but instead it was Y instead? Have you found that at all, or no?
Well, I found that, but not in the way that you're thinking of it. So,
Okay.
So we'll go. We'll take about an hour to go through a values-based spending exercise, right? Mm-hmm. And the first half hour is really establishing the values. I work with like pretty high-level executives mostly.
Yeah.
And they really want to get the first part right, like so hard. So they will, I don't know what it is about the kind of clients I attract, but they're like, oh, I need to be 100% accurate on my values. I need you to know who I really am. And so we'll go in, and most of them will say, are you sure I can't have 5? And, and so we spend a good half an hour on defining their values and making sure that they're accurate. And then we usually don't get through the rest of the exercise 100% in the hour. And I send them home with some homework, and then I quiz them on it later, but not really. I just check up. And, but 3 or 4 months later, we might revisit, or 6 months later, or 8 months later, we might revisit. And I'll say, hey, remember when we talked about your values? How have those changed over time? You've been really looking at all of your decisions over the last however many months. What have you noticed about yourself? And their values will have changed. I don't know a single person whose values have not changed over the course of however many months we work, because they're a lot more observant of their decisions, their life decisions, their spending decisions, their career decisions. And they tend to learn a lot about themselves, how they interact with others, what brings them joy, because again, I think whatever you measure, you improve. And so we measure things. And it's, they find it fun, the self-discovery fun, and they like to redefine their values when I ask that question.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually really intrigued that you just used the term redefine, because as you were talking, I was actually thinking in my mind, I want to ask her this. Do you think that they actually change their values, or do you think that they just find a better, more precise language around those values, and then you use the word redefine? So maybe that's kind of what you were talking about.
Yeah, some people redefine them, right? They're still, a lot of my clients will say God. And then they'll say, you know what it is? It isn't just God is my value, but it's worshiping God, or it is serving God, or it is loving God's people, and serving God's people, whatever it is. And so they learn more about themselves. They hone it down a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And because they're measuring that joy over time, they're learning about themselves. There's this period of self-discovery, along with tracking all of their finances and all their financial decisions and asking me if they're doing okay and all that stuff, which I just throw right back at them. Do you think you're doing okay? And, and so, but it's, I would say it's a little bit of redefining. Some people are like, hey, I really thought personal growth was one of my values, but I haven't spent anything on courses and I'm not missing it. Mm-hmm. And so they'll just take that out and replace it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think I'm not trying to split hairs here, but I'm wondering sometimes if it's not that they're necessarily redefining it, or even changing it. It's that it wasn't really their value to begin with. And they just thought that it was. And then because now they're more aware of what's going on, because of you're drawing that out of them. You're actually having them focus on that a little bit more, and that which we focus on, grows. And so we start to have that greater awareness. And so that's why I was curious if we have, I feel like sometimes we have these core values and they can shift, obviously, but I wonder how much of it's actually shifting of the values, or if it's just us having that more acute awareness, and again, being able to be more precise about those things. I don't know. It's a curiosity question.
Yeah, Maria, I feel like only God knows
that.
Yeah. Who knows the mind of man, right?
Yeah. Right. So. Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up this conversation, Catherine, one question I always like to ask all of our guests is really just like surrounding this whole topic of helping our clients be more aligned with their values and their spending, and really their money in general. What's one thing that you feel would be a piece of wisdom for someone who maybe has kind of up until this point been kind of just like the type of coach that just goes through those steps, kind of like steps, does the prescription or, all that kind of stuff. Right. And they're starting to think a little bit more about maybe going this route could actually be beneficial to not just my clients, but also the style of coach that I am as well. What would be one piece of wisdom for you to encourage them to explore this type of coaching, and taking this kind of angle on it?
Yeah. What a great question. I don't consider myself a wise person. I just consider myself somebody who does a lot of stuff. And then I learn from it, right?
That's how wisdom is made.
Yeah, well, so you're not going to get any nuggets of wisdom from me necessarily, but I would say if you're trying to break away from a prescription model, and let's back up a little bit, because it works for some people. Right. Mm-hmm. I know some coaches, they're really charismatic. They get a lot of clients. They're very prescriptive. They're like, do this, 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 and this. And then, and your financial life will be perfect. And they don't actually say that, but, and it can work for them. Right. But let's say you're a coach who is trying to increase your income. You're not necessarily like your big charismatic person. You're not somebody that people gravitate toward, but you do have a few clients and you would love to get referrals. You'd love to increase your client base. I have found that the deeper side of frameworks and exercises that you do with your clients, the ones that really get them into self-discovery and to thinking deeper, not just following a model or a prescription, but understanding the why and the what, not just the how, will transform their thinking and their lives to the point where they can't help but tell everybody about you. Mm. If somebody comes to them and says, hey, I have this car loan and I feel like I'm a little underwater, or I can't really go out, or I'm not sure, or I don't know what's happening with my job and I'm a little afraid of losing my job. They will say, have you met this amazing transformational financial coach? I learned so much about myself and my spending, and now I have an emergency fund and I never thought I'd have one. Now I've paid off my credit cards and I never thought I would. I thought I'd have them forever. And they will not, they just won't be able to help but tell people about you. So if you're afraid of getting into the deeper stuff, don't be afraid, because your fear is holding back your clients. It's holding back your business. And if you really want your business to grow, then grow with your clients. That's all I'd say.
I love that. I love that.
Pretty good for someone with no wisdom, Catherine.
I need to keep the bar low.
Awesome. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for this conversation. Thanks for just coming on the show. It was a blessing to have you. Whether you think that you shared some wisdom or not, I can tell you from my perspective, I feel a little bit more wise today. So thank you for that. And I know that the listeners also feel the same way too. So all of you guys listening out there, make sure that you, re-listen to this episode, take a couple notes. And Catherine, if they wanted to connect with you in some way, maybe just to talk about coaching, just have a conversation with you, like whatever it might be, what would be the best way for them to find you?
Yeah. So I was going to say I live at, but my website is savorstreet.com. So savor as in savor, not a spender, not savior. I've had people say that before, and I'm trying not to be sacrilegious. So savorstreet.com. Feel free to get in touch. If you're a coach who also is part of a church, really do get in touch, because I have a gift for you, only if you want it. And I'd love to meet. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, make sure you get in touch with Catherine, get that free gift. And, we just want to say thank you again for, checking in and listening to this episode, guys. There's some of you who listen every week. We love you guys. You're our every weekers. And it seems like every week we get in contact with another one through our Facebook group who says, like, I'm an every weeker. It's, it's kind of like a badge of honor for some people. So we love seeing that. And, with that being said, we just hope that you also check out the episode next week. So, if you listen to this one and if you listen to the next one, you might be an every weeker. Who knows? So check it out. And until then, just start living into those values for both yourself and your clients, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching. Music provided by Summer School.